Hi and welcome to my 2019 Spring Tokyo FUJIYAAVIC Headphone Festival report. I checked out a lot of gear this time at the festival, including this RME ADI2 Pro, which a lot of people have been asking me about. It was connected via the balance connectors to a pair of Sennheiser HD600 headphones, and I can say at least it sounded pretty good. Also at the show, Shanling had their M2x Portable Player, and I've got one of these in for review. They also had some IEMs on display, but my main interest at this time is their new portable player, which sells for around $200. Pentacon, who are now the first and primary makers of their 4.4mm jack, which you can just see at the bottom there, now have a chassis connector, albeit that it is a chassis screw-on version of their portable player connector. So if you have thin chassis like is demonstrated on this metal board, then it will be good, but for thicker chassis, I'm hoping they'll make a larger kind of Nutric jack style connector eventually, or someone else will make some high quality ones, as I'd like to see that spread more. Dita had their Oslo cables available. Now they've switched from Vandenhull to a custom-made cable which uses an wire in oil, which goes back over 50 years to old-style cables, which were immersed in oil, and I used them with a pair of Campfire Audio Solaris. And compared to the stock cable, I thought the sound made for a bit of improvement. It's certainly a more conventional style cable than the Vandenhull one, which was kind of very rubbery and a little bit hard to move around. It is thinner, and well, it certainly looks the part in the clear sheathing here. And I had a bit of a time to listen and play around with the cable, and it also has their awesome plug system attached so that you can connect 2.5mm, 3.5mm or 4.4mm just by unscrewing the plug on the end, and so you don't have to change cables or buy a whole new cable. Final had their Make One IEMs on display, which I didn't have a listen to, but I did have a listen to the D8000 headphones out of this $14,000 Mass Kobo amp, both of which I hope to get in for review at some point, although a $14,000 amp maybe not on the list. The D8000s definitely are on my list, as they were great sounding headphones. So I don't know if that's an original cable or an aftermarket cable, but they sounded pretty excellent. I sat down this time and listened to Sony's DMP-Z1, but not only was that available for listening with a pair of MDR-Z1R headphones, but the engineer who designed it was there on hand to answer questions. Not only did he design the DMP-Z1, but also all the other major portable players that Sony has made in recent times. It was great to be able to talk to him and ask him questions. The DMP-Z1, of course, being at around $7,000 and having a big shiny gold knob on the front, it's obviously a lifestyle device for people with lots of money. It still sounded pretty good all the same, although I don't have any particular comments about the sound. This big gold volume knob control is actually a $1,000 Alps volume knob, which is the top of the line available. You usually see it in amps like head amps Blue Hawaii. But also remarkable about the DMP-Z1 was just how carefully all the electronics are arranged inside the DAC amp. Everything is laid out very carefully on the boards, which is why you see stuff kind of in a diagonal layout, to ensure that all traces are exactly the right length and that impedance is minimized, not having sharp bends in the traces on the board, and other factors such as that. I also got to talk to the designer of the IR-Z1R and have a listen to these IEMs. They're certainly very thunderously bassy, kind of like a big old school speakers like JBL and what have you, which have very big subwoofers. They're kind of very intense, and so is the designer, very passionate and very determined in how he designs his products. Now, speaking of rigs, this is a Sony, yes, it is the Sony player inside a Van Nuys case. It's the DMP-Z1 to make for the ultimate $7,000 rig, yes, you can listen to headphones while you have the DMP-Z1 inside the case. It has enough space to allow plugging in and out, and to make for a gigantic and crazy portable rig. Van Nuys make a number of different cases. Here's one for storing, well, whatever you like. I wish there was made one slightly wider than this so I could store all the various portable amps and players that I have here when I'm not using them, but they make cases for just about everything out there. VanNuys.jp, definitely worth checking out. Now for Lucid Audio, back they have been bought out by another company here, which is known as Ranco, and they were still making the same IEMs and new models, as well as selling, well, check out these adapters. And I need something like this because I have so many different things I need to plug in and out that I could do with a collection of adapters like that. But if the Translucent are still making IEMs and cables, and so they are now still available. One of my favorite things at the show is checking out these audio geeks who have the most amazing collection of vintage and DIY gear I've ever seen. And they have some pretty funny stuff in there, including, which you can see with the sign in front of them, a pair of condenser earphones. Yes, that's exactly what you think. It is earphones with a high voltage transformer made using condenser mics. And the sound was, well, yeah, ridiculous. But they did it just for fun, and these guys are just so much fun with the stuff they make. Here are some more condenser. They made some condenser headphones as well, which sounded suitably ridiculous, powered as they were by various high voltage transformers. And you can see here they make a lot of very crazy and weird products, as well as just have the most amazing collection of vintage portable CD players and vintage headphones and, well, stuff I've never seen before, like this IBM CD player. And these look like, what are these, SE505, I guess Pioneer? I have no idea, but there's stuff here I've never seen in my life, and you can check out all of it, plug it in, have a listen, and kind of play around with it. They even had this time a pair of first batch Ultrasone Edition 9 headphones, which were probably worth a fair bit of money now. Also, another one I got a chance to listen to was Sennheiser's HD820s, and I found it, unfortunately, after I listened, and after I thought, what's the deal with these, that they actually need to have a very good seal around your head to get good sound. If they don't, then they sound kind of off, and I think a lot of people didn't realize this when they auditioned them. So hopefully I can get a pair in and see what the deal is about them, because I've heard mixed impressions, some good and some bad, and it may come down just to the seal. Also, one of my favorite pairs of headphones, Audio-Technica's ADX 5000s. These sounded just as good as I remembered them from the last show. Very much like a high-end version of the AD 2000s, but very, very intense levels of detail and presentation. I really hope to get these in for review sometime, and I have that on my list. Also, Stax, of course, they're portables. I hadn't really considered these portable because originally they weren't sealed back, and so kind of taking them out and about when you have zero isolation was no good. But now they have little caps on the back you can put on to make them really a pair of kind of portable IEMs, and they redesigned the ear tips to make them more comfortable. So they have a couple of portable amps, one which can work with the full-sized headphones and one just with a portable, and I'll be checking those out in the near future. Spirit Torino was on hand with their, what I would call Grado-like headphones, which they had three very interesting models. Some of the models were kind of odd, like this pair here, which have dual drivers per side, one behind the other, which is kind of odd. They were selling for quite a lot of money. I think it was kind of around the $4,000 or larger mark, and the sound, well, I'm not quite so convinced that it's $4,000 worth of sound. But interesting designs all the same, and it reminded me a lot of the DIY Grado market. The one pair I really liked was this basic pair, which just had a single driver per side and just a basic design. And to me, out of the three pairs I tried, they sounded the best. So you can DIY your own Grados more or less nowadays for only a few $100s. So it was kind of odd to see something like that for more, over $1,000. With much the same design as what Grado charged, a fraction of that for. An interesting pair they had was a passive driver version, where they have a driver, and behind that they have a kind of, I suppose, a passive driver, which has which moves to allow them to be closed back, but without restricting the movement of the driver so much. This was quite an interesting design, but the sound, well, that was a bit odd. Well, anyway, here's Sean, who didn't actually realise I was recording him on video. Sean was listening to the 11 Audio battery-powered amps, which have the most black of black backgrounds, being that they're not connected to anything else. Amazingly quiet amps. And they do sell for quite a bit, but they do have pretty good sound, both being having a single-end version, and when Sean's not pretending to run away from my video, a balanced version as well. On the technical side of things, I talked to a representative of TechStream who is making pure carbon fiber, well, headphone and speaker parts. At the moment, there was much discussion of carbon fiber-based drivers, and these are made from, some of these parts are made from hair-thin carbon fiber strands molded into particular shapes, and I believe they're in maybe in some speakers now, but in the future you may see headphones made out of these. And we're not talking about graphene-coated plastic in this case, we're talking about pure carbon. Onkyo had on their display the SU1 wood-backed headphones, and, well, these were kind of interesting, but kind of light sounding with not much bass at all, so I'm not quite sure what their aim was with this design. A local Japanese company was making a Lightning or USB 3 audio adapter using the ES9018, and, well, it sounded like an ES9018 DAC. These are some cool things. These are bone conducting earphones, and kind of these appear and disappear over time. They only use the SBC codec, so they're not particularly resolving, but it was interesting having a pair of bone conducting headphones on my head, and when the bass came up in some tracks, it ended up being quite ticklish, in fact. But good for someone like who wants to go out, say, jogging or what have you, but must have be able to hear sound around them, but still want to play music. So an interesting idea there. And I had a listen to Hi-Fi Man's new Jade 2 headphones, and they were kind of light and airy, kind of like maybe older or inexpensive Stax models in terms of sound. So if you want to get an idea of what electrostats sound like in a basic sense, these were pretty interesting. I also had a listen to the HE1000 SE, which are like the original HE1000 model. Although there have been some changes made, they have the better earpad style of the HE1000 V2s, and they do have some foam inserted into the places which there were reverberation issues, and they appear to have a slightly different magnet structure. So they did sound pretty good, although maybe the top end was maybe just a touch harsh compared to the HE1000 V2s. One of the interesting companies I was recommended to have a listen to was QDC. I had to listen to a couple of pairs of their IEMs, the first being the Anole VX. These are an interesting pair of high-end IEMs where you can adjust the sound by flicking a number of tiny dip switches. I had to listen to them in just standard mode, and I have to say they had one of the nicest trebles of any IEM I've ever heard, if not the nicest. They're very even sounding in standard mode and were fantastic to listen with, very un-IEM-like, and they're very beautifully made. The only thing I don't like about them is they still use a 2-pin connector, and 2-pin connectors with varying sizes and other issues can be somewhat trouble. But the interesting thing also was that they can come in a variety of styles. So I don't know if this is for custom designs or for universal, but all the same, they do have some nice designs, and I heard they're pretty big in China, although not so much outside. I also listened to a second pair, which was an 8-driver pair. They had a slightly different tuning, although only one tuning obviously. They were a little bit, maybe a touch less bright sounding, but still all the same very good, and a few of us were discussing which model they preferred the sound signature of. Stax had their detachable cable versions of their top Lambda models now. They also added aluminium yokes to the design, so they're no longer plastic, make them a little bit more robust. The detachable cable will make it easy for replacing the cable should they suffer damage, although of course the Stax are always headphones you treat with delicately and carefully. At least that option is now available. Dectoni had a cool thing called Nuggets, which if you have headphones with worn headpads or stiff and uncomfortable headpads, you just put one or two of these on the top. And they come in a variety of different sizes and shapes for different kinds of headphones, and then your headphones then become more comfortable. I forgot to video this, but Fostex had prototypes of their new TM2 Bluetooth earphones on display. These connect kind of oddly. You pair up one side first, and then the other side will automatically request a pairing so that both connect. They had a pair of 6mm driver IEMs connected by default, which actually sounded pretty good. They were full range, although they would have the limitations, obviously, of 6mm drivers, so you wouldn't be blasting your ears out. However, the interesting feature of them is that they come with optional connectors, allowing you to connect IEMs that either use MMCX 2-pin or the FUJIYAAVIC connector, which is a reverse Sennheiser connector. So, of course, they're in partnership with FUJIYAAVIC, so it's not surprising they included that rarer connector. So that makes them versatile as a Bluetooth connection for your own in-ear monitors. I had a good listen, and I actually liked the sound, and I hope to get these in for a review down the track. Last but not least, Ken Ball and the team had their new IEMs on display for Campfire Audio. The first of those, the EO, is a dual balanced armature IEM, and I've got those in for review. If you haven't already, check out the unboxing I did of those. And the second is a new version of the Polaris, which is their basic hybrid IEM, consisting of one dynamic driver and one balanced armature. And both of those are running in now on that channeling M2x I mentioned before, and I'll be reviewing those shortly. If you haven't already, check out the unboxings of those. And subscribe if you want to be notified when the reviews come out. Also if you did like my Tokyo show report, do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'll be doing these every time I go to a show. Also, thanks once again to my supporters for supporting this. If you'd like to help me make more videos for only a couple of bucks per month, equivalent to buying me a coffee once in a while, you can help me make these videos and support independent reviews. And thanks once again, and I'll see you online.